I see the Lamborghinis, got the Aston Martin out, got a whole bunch of cars. We got to figure out what this guy did to be able to put himself here. Are you from Los Angeles originally?
Well, I was born in Colombia. I came here when I was 6 years old.
Meet Edwin Arroyave. Over the last 25 years, he's built one of the largest 9-figure empires in the city of Los Angeles. Over 25 years, how much money has that business generated you?
That business has made over 600 million.
Despite creating a $600 million company, Edwin didn't start here. In fact, he spent his childhood growing up in poverty and even living in a foster home.
And both my parents ended up in jail. When they really put my dad away for a long time, I made him a promise that I'd take care of the house. And I became the head of household at 15 years old. And I got a chance to start working early, and then I started hustling.
Even though at an early age he faced extreme adversity, he ultimately prospered and became one of the most successful entrepreneurs in all of Los Angeles. In this video, Edwin breaks down how he went from being broke and living in poverty to creating one of the most successful 9-figure business empires in the entire world. What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to Questions with Multimillionaires. I'm James, and I'm here with 9-figure Los Angeles entrepreneur Edwin Arroyave. We're gonna ask him how he became successful, how he was able to get this multi-million-dollar house. So with that being said, let's get started, and can't wait to figure out how. What industry did you decide to pursue a career in?
Home security. I've had that now for 25 years, and I just started a solar company a year and a half ago, which just happens to be the 20th fastest growing company in Inc. 5000 magazine.
How old were you when you started your first business?
I was 21 years old.
21. And how old are you now?
I'm 46.
What's the most amount of money that your business has ever generated in a single year?
It'll be this year. We'll do 200 million.
Scaling is one of the hardest things to do as a business owner. A lot of people, they'll have that great idea, but they don't know how to scale and grow it. So how have you been able to scale to a 9-figure business?
It has to come back to influence, right? Because to bring in good people, they have to believe in you. You know, your dream's got to be so big that everybody's dream can fit inside of it. Because again, the good people, they have a lot of options, but you got to take the first step. Faith is really taking action before you have what you need. I remember as soon as I started the home security company, I bought the minivan before I actually had the people. Because we used to go in minivans and I used to fill all of them up, and we used to go door to door. I didn't have a team yet, but I bought the minivan knowing that the people were coming. When you put money behind something, that's when you know you're committed. I call it a necessity level. A necessity level is this sudden willingness that untaps this tremendous amount of ability that you didn't know you had. That's why I've always been great at putting myself in pressure situations that increase my urgency level. I believe low stress is low performance. But when you put yourself in these uncomfortable situations, that's when that greatness that lies within comes out.
So there's a big debate in entrepreneurship whether entrepreneurs should diversify and go into a bunch of different industries or just focus on one thing. It seems like you doubled down throughout your career in the security business. Now you're branching off a little bit into solar, but what are your thoughts on diversification for entrepreneurs, or do you think they should just really focus on one thing throughout their career?
Well, I think in my experience, at least, you focus on one thing, you become really good at it, then that becomes your bread and butter. Right. And then you start to diversify, right? But first you have to find the business that brings in the constant cash flow no matter what. Right. That way then you can invest and take some chances in other businesses that you maybe not know as well. But I'm a firm believer in sticking to what you know, become really good at that, and then you could diversify. But trying to do 10 things at the same time, you have to get obsessed to be great at something. Like for me, I wanted to be great in the home security industry. Like I wanted to be the best. I want to be the best, and I'm constantly trying to improve in that. And now we're bringing that into solar. It took me 17 years to do 40 million in 1 year for security. It took me 1 year to do that in solar, but that's because I had already paid the price for 17 years.
You've generated hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue throughout your career. What has been the best financial advice that you've ever received throughout your lifetime?
Well, at the time, I didn't really have a mentor, so I sort of just kind of had to figure it out on my own. But one of the great things that I did when I first started was I would split my check 3 ways, and I would live on a third of it. One would go towards IRS and savings, and then the other one would go towards a reserve account that no one could touch. Yeah. You could call me and ask me for money. To me, that reserve account did not exist. And that reserve account has always helped me through tough times, because in life and pain are inseparable, and you're gonna have to go through some tough times. So for me, because I liked nice things, but being able to cut it 3 ways allowed me not to live outside my means. Right. That said, I was huge on having nice things. It's what made me want to work hard. I wanted to stand out. I wanted to be rare. At 21 years old, I wanted to be the first 21-year-old in my city driving a Mercedes convertible. I didn't want to do it when I was 28, because by then everybody had a Mercedes, right? So just little ways that I would compete against myself.
What is the greatest dream that you've ever accomplished throughout your lifetime?
It has to be my first one. I promised my mom that I would buy her dream house, and at 21 years old, I remember being woken up by a roach, and I said, this is the last time a roach which wakes me up. And I went to an open house that weekend, and I realized that, wait a minute, all I have to do is come up with $12,000 as a down payment. All I got to do is come up with $1,400 a month. I'm like, I do that in one day. So I grabbed my mom, picked her up, took her to the house. I said, Mom, this home will be yours in 90 days. And at that point, I sort of tricked myself into success because I wasn't going to let her down. She started crying, I started crying. And then I just knew, like I said earlier, with regards to the blueprint, I knew I needed to do 8 to 10 sales for 12 weeks straight, and if I did that, I would be able to buy my mom her house. And that's the reason I did not quit when it was 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and I wanted to stop because I didn't have a result. I was like, I'm not leaving here until I get a deal. And then I can't tell you how many deals I got at 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, 10:30, and then I started filling myself up with belief. And I think the reason people don't buy from you is because you look desperate. I didn't look desperate anymore because I knew that somehow, some way, I would always get to sell at the end of the day, but it started with my mom's dream. And if you don't come from a rich family can come from you. And I made the decision in my family that I was going to be the one person that changed my family tree forever.
This video is sponsored by BetterHelp. A lot of the time, mentors will tell you that getting in shape and getting in the gym is crucial for self-improvement. I'm here to tell you that your mental health is just as important. A lot of the times as entrepreneurs, we're faced with roadblocks, limiting beliefs, loneliness while building our businesses. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who is trained to listen and give you helpful and unbiased advice. As entrepreneurs, we have limited time in our schedule, but through BetterHelp, you have the opportunity to have therapy sessions through phone call, video chat, or even messaging, whatever the most comfortable version of therapy is for you. BetterHelp can match you to one of over 30,000 therapists in their network, which may give you access to a wider range of expertise than what may be available in your area. To get started, you'll fill out a questionnaire to help assess your specific needs, and then you'll be matched with a therapist in most cases within 48 hours. When starting therapy, you can easily switch to a new therapist at no additional cost, without stressing about insurance, who's in your network, or anything like that. On the journey to self-improvement, we're always trying to constantly better ourselves, and we spend hours in the gym, but why not give our mind that same attention? If you think you might benefit from therapy, consider BetterHelp. Click the link in the description below or go to betterhelp.com to get 10% off your first month. Now, with that being said, let's get back to the video. When it comes to the way that people look at money in today's world, what would you say is the biggest thing that separates the middle class from the wealthy?
At least for me, again, in my experience, you gotta have a good relationship with money. I think a lot of people have a bad relationship with money. You know, if you're always worried about not having enough money, if you're always worried about not saving enough money, then what happens is you start to hoard all of your money. And what happens when you hoard all of your money, you never go out and touch the dream, or taste the dream. And if you never touch the dream or go taste the dream, then you're not gonna wanna get off your ass to go make it happen. So what happens then is you become complacent, hoping that one day you'll have enough savings to finally take action to have whatever it is that you want. But the reality of it, unfortunately, is the chances of that happening are slim to none. What probably will happen is you're gonna get punched in the face, you're gonna get knocked down, and at that point, it's gonna take most of your money, if not all of your money, and then you're stuck in this endless, vicious cycle of trying to have enough money so you could finally take action and become whatever it is that you wanna become. But in reality, you should become first, then take action, and then you could have whatever it is that you want. And that's an abundance mindset. For me, I started with becoming. Becoming is, like we said earlier, you have to have hope, the desire to want to do something great, faith, knowing that it's going to happen, taking action before you have what you need. And then you have to believe in yourself. And believing in yourself means believing something in your heart before you actually have it, believing that you're worth $1 million a year in your heart before you actually have it. The only way that ever happens is if you step into the uncertainty of something that demands more than you think you're worth. And when you do, when you succeed at it, then what happens is you start taking action before you have what you need, because you realize you're a money-making machine and the money's already in its way. The other thing that happens when you take action before you have what you need is it sends a signal to God, causes him to act, and now the right people start showing up. The other thing that happens is you get a blueprint on what you need to make that happen now, and all you have to do is break it down to the ridiculous. The more you can break it down to the ridiculous, the more attainable it becomes. The more attainable it becomes, the more realistic it becomes, the more you're gonna wanna get off your butt, because what causes you to take action is your ability to think you can get a result. Wow. And then you get have, which is when you put a date on when you're gonna do it by. And then you go all out, because if you don't put a date on when you're gonna do it by, then it just becomes a dream and you procrastinate. I've always been on about dates. I'm gonna do it 90 days later, and then you go after it like your life depends on it. And the hardest part about this little formula I'm giving you is that for whatever reason, right as you're gonna get your blessing, you're gonna get your biggest test, and you're gonna get punched, you're gonna get knocked down, and it's at that point where you gotta make a decision. Do you spring back up and revert back to who you used to be, someone that makes excuses all the time, or do you continue to push forward, having faith that the right people are going to show up and you focus on what you can control, and then everything happens at the end. I can't tell you how many times miracles have happened just because I did not quit. I was like, I don't know how we're going to do this, but we're going to make this happen, and the right people have shown out. Right. And I call that my abundance formula. I've used that to attain everything I have in my life. I could sit here for hours and tell you stories on incredible things that have happened just using that formula.
You talked about taking action. For someone who's stuck in their 9-to-5 right now and they're miserable in their day-to-day life, what advice would you give them to really create the absolute best life for themselves?
So it's figuring out the why. Too many people are worried about the what, the how, the where, the when. Not enough people are worried about the why. The why is the one thing you have to be certain about. And then once you find that out, again, you break it down to, if it's a dream, how much money do you need to be making a year, right? For me, to make 6, 7, 8 figures a year, you don't have to be that smart. You just need to find an opportunity that allows you to make that kind of money. And number 2 is you need to find someone who's got a vested interest in your success that's going to help you do it. And that's the hardest one, but if you find that, then the only reason you wouldn't make it is because you don't work hard. But that's what I would do, is I'd find something that will allow you to make the kind of money you want to make so that you can live out your dream, whatever that is, and then I'd find someone that has been successful at it, that has a vested interest in your success that's going to help you do it.
You talk a lot about how faith is very important to you, even as an entrepreneur. For someone who may not have that belief in God or that faith in their life, what advice would you give to them?
That whether you like it or not, you're faith-based. Faith is just the projection of the most beautiful possible thing for the future. The opposite of faith is fear, which is the worst possible thing for the future. If you think about it, they both haven't happened yet. You just have to choose, are you going to be positive or are you going to be negative? 90% of winning in life is just being positive, and that's where faith is so important.
For someone who's trying to find that relationship, like what advice would you give to people that are really trying to build their relationship with God?
Give yourself grace. We're not perfect. It's why we need God. If we were perfect, we wouldn't need him, so you're going to fall and you're going to make mistakes. But what I would say the adversary wants you to do is when you make those mistakes is he tries to pull you away and say, hey, if you go back, you're a hypocrite. But that's where he wants you. And it's when you're going through those struggles that you should have a connection with God. And it doesn't happen overnight. For me, I wrestled with it for 18 years, 20 years, but it was in my heart that I knew that I needed to get closer to God, because it didn't matter how much success I got, I always felt a little empty. There was always something empty in my heart. Every dream I've accomplished, and it was just, I'm like, all right, I got to go to something else. Yeah. And it's been a game changer for me. And it's not a bad thing, but I used to think that exterior factors like women, exotic cars, big houses would give me happiness. And just through my ups and downs, I've realized that those things didn't bring me happiness, they brought me pleasure. Now, there's nothing wrong with pleasure, but just keep in mind that pleasure is a sensation, and therefore it's unstable, because in the scales of life, it's always going to get balanced out by the discomfort and pain that you have to go through. So one of the ways that I've realized that my happiness comes from is living inside out versus exterior in. And the way you live inside out, which has been the biggest game changer for me, is gratitude exercises. And then number 2 is being able to take a negative and turn it into a positive. If you could do those 2 things, you start to live inside out versus exterior in.
You have a multi-million-dollar house out here in Los Angeles, California. But for someone who's aspiring to live this type of lifestyle someday, what is your best advice to the younger generation out there? If there's one message that you would pass on to the younger generation, what would that be?
So I think, my life is, I've had to reverse engineer my life, because for many years, up until 6 years ago, I can tell you how I succeeded. I just knew that I worked hard, I had discipline, I had perseverance, I had integrity, and I had big faith. But other than that, I couldn't really tell you how I succeeded. Now that I've been studying mindset, I've came across this thing called the reticular activating system, and you could actually Google this stuff. So the reticular activating system is part of your subconscious mind, and what you got to understand about your subconscious mind is that it sees everything and it hears everything, but it intentionally does not share it back to your conscious mind, because if it did, your mind would get overwhelmed and you would go to sleep. So instead, your subconscious mind filters what information it's going to send to your conscious mind, and it does it by the way of the reticular activating system. And the only thing it allows to get to your conscious mind is anything having to do with your dreams, which is why you're supposed to have some big God-sized dreams, anything having to do with your self-worth, which is why you got to build your identity, and anything that has to do with your survival, which is why you got to get obsessed with the things that you want. Because sometimes if you don't do those 3 things, you could have an opportunity that will change your life forever, and you won't won't even see it. As I look back to the decision I made at 21 years old when I left a job that was paying me $70,000 a year and everybody thought I was crazy, I could tie it back to that, because at 12 years old, I used to daydream all day long on how one day I was going to make 100 grand by the age of 21. I started going to Rodeo Drive in Beverly Hills and I started dreaming of how one day I was going to end up there. I had these huge dreams. I had my self-worth, which was already kind of high because I had accomplished some good things at a young age, and I needed it for survival. Like I was like, there was no way that I wasn't going to succeed. I made a promise to my mom, I made a promise to my dad, and I was going to make it happen. So understanding that is huge.
Man, amazing. Guys, that's a wrap on today's video. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe for some amazing content coming soon. And everybody click right here to watch us going all around Miami, Florida, asking multimillionaires how you can become successful in today's world.